Tough guy.
I need to talk about how misgendered several times before. I need to cool this up now.
Pop these trannies like a pilly sissy, you a frilly sissy at the con with the prissy sissies and them faggy sissies. You speak up and they stab and skissies, cream they panties pissy. OJY, not a tranny sissy, you a fan of sizzy on the E dick in my George Gardner on my phone. You wanna fuck with no hard on, bitch, quit your deep ass modes. Only stroke your bone alone. 45 minutes from the hormones. Step your pussy up, or your dead name's on your gravestone. In matriarchy, but I'm transition, we gender abolition. Foxy, don't talk right, they trying to get me first edition. All you do is misgender, man. I'll cut your tongue out like audition. So many pedos in the community, it's like the remix to Ignition. I don't fuck with no new pose, only real hoes. Put my dick in the guillotine and I pass it to my bro. You get clocked in the bathroom and you call a gym girl. Well, I had my gold on me, I thought that they would never know.
Yeah.
I'm an identity shit, appropriate a bitch.
Right.
Call myself a
Welcome
cold witch,
to the
living darkness like a
TERFCAST.
lich.
This is
Trash
episode
prisons on the web,
4.
white
I
rich with
am
the glitch, get
Foxy.
sexually
I'm Karen.
repressed. So I say that I'm a
And
switch.
this is the cast for TERFs.
Yeah,
Yeah, the main story going on this week is mostly about women's bodies. So we'll get to that because of course that becomes a thing. Anything else that we want to get out of the way just to start with, Karen?
I mean, I do have my contentions from previous episodes that we could argue out, but
Okay, sure.
I've had this one on the list for a while. I think it was in episode 1. You stated that you thought that trans med are more misogynistic than Tucutes.
That's true.
And I think that I want you to defend that further.
Okay. Sure. There's no problem with me defending that because it's true. My reasoning behind that is that transmedicalism seeks to canonize femininity into the objective medical sphere, whereas Tucutes, not only do they talk about like, oh, I can be hairy and still a woman, stuff like that. Like, so like they understand, at least that. It's just that their ideology ends up making less sense because they both have trans ideology, and one of their trans ideologies, the transmedicalist one, is based in misogyny, whereas the Tucute one is based in completely nothing. Gender to them is meaningless. So
see, okay,
yeah.
So this is where I feel like I want to bring up the SJW like thing about like intent versus impact. So where the transmed have this idea of kind of fitting in, and so they're certainly not challenging gender roles. They need to just fit into whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
The Tucutes are wanting to change, like transmed don't necessarily want to change the definition of woman, depending on like how.
Yes, they do.
Not.
It's necessary for them to do. The least that transmed want to change the definition of woman is to include a neo-vagina. That's the very least that transmed would want to change it, and that would still take away from the entirety of female biology.
Sure. So like
it's definitely there. Like transmeds are really like their assimilation is not into like womanhood. It's into patriarchy's idea of womanhood.
Sure, but they also don't necessarily push as hard on like the only time that transmed push as hard on like changing the definition of woman is when they will just take too cute arguments. Like they'll just kind of become too cutes for a while so they can make those arguments. But they can't, within their own framework, change the definition of woman.
Well, this is just then we're talking about basically like basic conservatism versus any sort of progressivism as too cuteness. And or not even necessarily progressivism, but like I don't know, postmodernism forward towards trans goals. But so transmedicalism isn't like if transmedicalism is to get political at all, which it needs to, because it's still a marginalized identity, then it counts as ideological. It's not. I'm never really think about whether it's specific people in the movement doing however much activism.
Yeah, I mean, but like ultimately in terms of impact, like transmedicalism has a lower impact on women in general because it limits because it's too small to stop the forces if the forces of gender roles are changing, if the forces of anti-patriarchy or whatever are strong enough, there's not enough trans medicalists to stop that. They can't say like no, women must wear lipstick and heels. They can insist that trans women should wear lipstick and heels, and in some senses I think actual women are maybe more comfortable with that idea, like the idea that like a man has a full beard and a dick and puts a little bit of lip gloss on and can call himself a woman isn't like that's not very acceptable to people who are even like kind of okay with sharing some spaces with trans women. Whereas the too cute thing insists on all language changing, insists on allowing that bloke to put on his lip gloss and call himself a woman. And the trans medicalist like limits that. It limits how many people can call themselves women and what they have to do.
Yeah, but based on, gender roles though. It's like, so it's just a very practicalist argument, I think. Like, I don't know, I've been all very much more theory oriented my entire life. So just like in the abstract, I definitely think that it would still be, transmedicalist ideology would be, more couched in misogyny, certainly, than the too cute ideology, which at least pays lip service to the idea that women don't have to be a certain way.
Yeah, I think it may just be my preference for open misogyny. Like, I like my misogyny where I can spot it and point my finger at it. And I think that the too cute is like is much harder misogyny to point to. And whereas transmedicalists, especially the homosexual, transsexual supremacy, they're extremely misogynistic, and it's in some ways it can be almost shocking compared to what you're used to, but it's like, well, at least I know it. At least it's not hidden. And, like, at least it's in the open.
Well, my definition of misogyny is more like, it kind of excludes, super open misogyny. Like, I mean, if a guy is just going around like, women need to make me a sandwich. Like, I don't care about that. Like, I care, like, because I'm more focused on the entire system of patriarchy and women's oppression. And misogyny, I think, is just an attitude that everybody ends up espousing a little bit of because it's so pervasive. The only thing I could possibly maybe think that of somebody not being exposed to that is like a third generation person raised in a lesbian commune, butch lesbian commune. And
Yeah,
even then, like, there might still be traces of that. Like,
sure, sure.
think about like slavery. Like, how far removed are we from that, and how much are the repercussions still here? How, like, there's so much racism and like liberals, like, who like say like, I'm not racist because I don't say the N word, and it's like
Nobody says
see to me,
that.
yeah, that's no, plenty of, that's the entire attitude is of racism, is just not saying the N word because it's the most direct example that you can have of it. And the same would be true of misogyny. You can still have very misogynist attitudes without, I don't know, being a rapist or something. So to me, yeah, that's more my definition of misogyny, and that's why I believe that trans medicalists are more misogynistic, because it's more of, an ideological thing based around very, conservative attitudes about women that they have, compared to Tucutes, who just don't have an ideology really. Their ideology is like a totally incoherent idea of freedom. So, and at least it has some feminist text in it. So,
Okay. All right. Well,
we should,
moving on
yeah,
to
our
we
lead
had,
story.
yeah, our lead story is in the Tucutes,
Yeah, so
demanding inclusive language in the abortion debate.
divorce.
Divorce.
That's the title of the episode.
Divorce.
Yeah, like I alluded to earlier, the main story this week is about, you're right, Tucutes pretty much entirely demanding, a space in this women's bodies debate. And this is for the sake of, female people still, trans men, and, the NBs. So, honestly, I kind of see this as coherent. I'm not gonna lie.
Like within their own.
Well, the way that it is they are like, female bodied people are, they don't phrase it like this, but they say essentially their thing is female bodied people don't always call themselves female, and therefore should be or socially female. They don't call themselves, and therefore they should be still in this language. Now, the only thing is they don't have basically anything they can organize around language wise is no longer woman, because the trans women, like, some women have penises, which is just drives me nuts even more every time I hear it, but just because it's such a gross thing to say. But they want to organize around something like uterus haver or menstruator instead,
Yeah.
which is gross and dehumanizing, but it also is coherent.
So, yeah, I had in exchange, there was a person who was starting some kind of, I don't know, outreach or something about periods in the UK, and it had come across my Twitter feed. They had written something along the lines of, like, a tweet that said, women and people who have periods was who they addressed it to.
Oh no!
And
no! Now we're getting into some horrible territory.
So the TERFs were mad at them for saying people who have periods. The TRAs were mad at them for saying women. So I just felt for them. I retweeted it and said, like, I cannot get mad at this. Like, they're speaking the language of the youths. Like, there are, like you said, there are people who have periods who don't call themselves women. So they're reaching out to those people while also keeping woman. Like, I can't argue with that. I can't, like, be mad about that. And they
Well,
they messaged me like, "Thank you for your support. I'm getting so much shit." And I was like, "Yeah, that sucks." Like,
I
so
mean,
okay, go ahead.
yeah, you tried essentially. That's what I would say to them. Like, I don't think there's anything like wrong with that in our current climate, really, saying that. Besides, the knowledge, I think it makes, I understand that people would be mad about that just because people are mad about everything, but it's still not, like, to me, like, the as an idealist, the ideal way to phrase it would just be women, but or I was about to say maybe we could just come up with another word that was not menstruate or whatever that could actually mean female, because it matters, and female is obviously being taken.
But
Just like,
any word that you
but like
come up
it's
with
still
is going to get
capitulation.
any word that you come up with is going to get colonized.
That's true.
As soon as
Yep.
enough women, female AFABs start calling themselves that, then it's just going to be taken up by by men who want it.
You're right. It's just like slurs,
Mm.
where every new PC word you come up with is going to be a slur. Um,
Oh yeah, the
but
treadmill.
yeah. So I want to bring up briefly. Now I know this doesn't really work in a sense of parity, because trans women, like, they wouldn't have the same shame of manhood. Definitely there is a shame of manhood in trans womanhood, but it's not the same one. But so I'm going to discuss the shame of being called a woman, by especially the non-binary contingent, and that's that the influence that has on this whole demand for a different language, which is
See, but
why can't.
oh, I'm sorry. I
No, go ahead.
interrupted you. I was going to
No,
say
go ahead. I was done.
I was going to say that a lot of trans men that I know who are not Tucutes, they don't want to be included. Like, they are smart enough to know when something actually does include them or not. And they don't want to be reminded of having periods, so, or having, female reproductive system. So they don't want to hear, trans men and cis women. You know what I mean? Because it ties them to that. So they like, and I think that's why I don't mind somebody saying women and other people. But I disagree with, menstruators, cervix havers, those types of things. Because people who are trans have gone through all, like, they're very aware of their bodies. They're particularly aware that they are female or male. And that's why they're in such a tizzy about anybody else reminding them about it, because they know. And these words like menstruator, cervix havers, those types of things, for low education people, they're not gonna understand all that shit. They don't have time to learn all these new rules.
Men
And
don't even know where the clitoris is.
sure, exactly. So, like, if you're like a poor woman who, hasn't attained much education, only knows like a limited vocabulary, and you see some like health, like there's some health outreach, and they say like, women need to come down and get this, exam, don't forget when you're over the age of whatever. If it says shit like former menstruators or whatever, like, they're not gonna register that. Versus, so, we have to think about who we want to reach with language, and who is smart enough to know that they've chosen some other life path, but that's off of the mainstream, but that, this information applies to them. Most fucking AFAB people are in college or recently graduated. They are smart enough to know that some things include them when they say women or when they say men. We don't need to, like,
Well, but it
reach out
triggers
to
them,
them.
Karen.
I don't fucking care. This is Karen too much saying right now, I don't give a fuck if you're triggered about being unincluded in women's rights because you've decided not to call yourself a woman. Come at me.
You should. Here's my contention here is that why do we need these new different terms in the first place? This is my whole deal. Why can't we just have, maleness opened all the way up to the category of as feminine as you want to be? You
I
can
agree.
get, your damn surgeries to make you look even more feminine. You can, get even SRS if you want it. There's no reason why that should even stop you from calling yourself male or a man. Like, it can, be kind of sexy even, like, as opposed to, like, just
I agree.
This pale imitation of womanhood. It's just, it's so much worse for every reason to start calling men women and start calling women men, because they're just gonna be inferior, and you can be like, no, I'm just as good because some women suck as much as me. They're as ugly as me. They're
as
they
infertile
have,
or whatever.
Just all these just appropriations of things that are totally irrelevant to you because
you're not
a
female.
woman.
Yeah.
No. This is one thing that's really bugged me for a long time. Who gave trans women the right to use the word woman? Nobody. But they just took it because they're men. So and yet here we are in this culture that's out to redefine what the word even is. And it's all at the behest of people who should have had no say in the first place. They are just oh, I'm oppressed because people give me funny looks, and I understand the oppression of trans people, but I don't really agree with trans as a category. I just think it is a reaction to patriarchy. It's not, it's nothing inherent. It's not an inherent identity group that we should be organizing around, as opposed to fucking sex. It's just blatant.
Yeah, I think that I don't have a percentage, but I would say the vast majority, even those who claim otherwise, of trans women don't actually want the definition of woman to change exactly. They want it to include them, but they want it to stay the same for cis women
on a patriarchal axis.
Access, because they need to fit in, and there is a thing there that they are craving, right? And if that thing doesn't exist, then how can they want it?
You're right. It's I think everybody is trying to change the definition of woman in one way or another, whether feminists are trying to change it away from gender stereotypes, and trans ideology wants to keep the stereotypes, but change it away from sex.
Right.
Which, okay, let's, abstract that completely. It's, even from morality, it's just nonsensical.
And you know what? I feel like most people, even though we say that that there's a stereotype, there's a social definition of woman, where somebody would say, now that's a woman. I still think that most people still understand that all female, people who are not young are women. Even if they're saying well, that's a woman I don't want to fuck, they still know that it's a woman. And so, yeah, we would definitely be kind of moving backwards if we were no, that's a woman. But everybody else is non-binary or something.
Well, it's very strange. I've experienced this. People will tell me all the time that they see me as a woman. And it's Well, in the past, I haven't really had the nerve or really even the idea to tell them that no, don't do that, or even you don't have to do that. Um, but and these people are like the ones who like think they're like very progressive. So
Mm-hmm.
they are the ones who like say there's also like a butch lesbian in my, I don't know, workplace or wherever environment that I'm being told this. They would see her as a woman too, but that's because to them she identifies as one,
Mm-hmm.
which even though she's essentially been disidentifying with everything that defines a woman that I do identify with.
But
So
I could
we're
see.
at completely different definitions here,
Sure, exactly. But I
and
could
we should
see,
defer to hers.
like, I could see though where somebody would say, because I feel this way about some of my gay friends, like, he just feels like one of the girls. Yeah, I know. Fag hag. um, well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I know, actually, I even know straight men who have a very, I don't know, you can call it like a spirit or something. There's just
Oh
like
my
a
god.
demeanor or whatever
The
that
ones and they
is
flop their arms around a little bit.
flop around. Yeah, no, but I mean, where you just kind of feel like, well, this is at least not, this is more like talking to a woman and less like talking to a man. You can still be aware that you are talking to a man, but that in within the patterns of social interaction, that it's an outlier for like talking to a man. And I could see how like a group of men who like work with a butch lesbian would be like, yeah, we see her as one of the guys, and how she would like that. She wants to be treated as
Right.
as not other and as not different. So like I do understand that there is a social thing, and that because we see patterns and because lots of men and women do fall into patterns, that we can I can see you as like a woman,
Well,
except I don't. I feel like, honestly, I think that most
what?
trans people are not like the sex that they are transitioning to, or not the gender that they're transitioning to. I feel like most of the time,
Are you saying that mostly about AGP or?
no, not necessarily, because like we have, I won't name them, but we have like a mutual HSTS friend, and she asked me like, do you think of me as a woman? I don't know if she asked me if I think of her as a woman or like, um, but yeah, I was just like, no, you seem like a gay man to me. Like, gay men seem more womanly to me, but you don't
More,
seem
yeah,
like a
the define
woman.
womanly there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, when you're talking about patterns, like, it's more like
Hmm.
talking to a woman or it's more like talking to a man.
Yeah, but
It's like you're talking
the
to a man.
woman and man there are not inherent because like if you have obviously like if you have a penis you can still talk like a woman or whatever.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying though. Like where it's just like it's just we're humans and we notice patterns and we can say like, wow, like when I talk to 25 to 35-year-old white men, it often goes like this. And when I talk to, you know,
Well, that's off of
16
socialization rather
to
than sex.
no, totally. Yeah, but I'm just
Hmm.
saying like some people because of, just the way that their personalities are and the way that the socialization of everybody else is can come off as feeling more along the lines of the experiences of talking to a different group of people identity wise. But like I don't think that matters. I just think that like that is a reality that we can't like ignore. I just don't think that it's particularly interesting
Well,
to
it's a
legal
reality that
matters.
it's a reality I'd like to get rid of anyway.
Well, I mean, like we're all like
Mm,
I said, we're always gonna have gender. There's always
No,
we're not gonna
no,
have this
no,
gender. No, we're
no.
not. We're just people are gonna see patterns. We're not all like perfect, unique individuals. A lot of us follow
Well, that's
trends. We're a
because we have
social
sex.
animal. But yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to like
No more gender.
legal ideas and institutional ideas, we should be focusing on sex, not gender.
Gender abolition. Forever. Gender abolished utopia. No. I'm gonna also talk very briefly. Maybe not even briefly, but let's also talk about the another part that's more relevant to the actual substance of the lead story, which is, you know, abortion and transness or whatever. Number one, I'm fairly sure trans men eventually, a lot of the time, lose the ability to get pregnant, or at least they stop their period.
They
So,
do. Yeah, it would only be
yeah.
early transitioners or those on really low dose T who would be affected by this.
Second, many trans men don't even like being penetrated.
That would be correct. Many of them are lesbians.
Right.
They don't like that, but sorry that you have internalized homophobia. But
Third, are they
that's
having
true.
sex with a trans woman who also has a diminished capacity for getting pregnant? And I'm not saying this never happens, because I know it does, but
It did happen.
a lot of the time, it you know, it can happen. But
I don't. Would you
I don't
want
know
a
I don't know
kid?
what the rates are, if they're comparable to like condom use or whatever. But like, this is
Yeah.
another example of, you were talking about last time how, you know, just this very, very small portion of people wants to control language, and to you that's elitism. That's the same thing here. This is an infinitesimally small percentage of people who, you know, have the capability, even, yeah, of getting pregnant. And yet here we are, like, base our whole language around that. Like,
Yeah.
are you fucking kidding me? Like, why is it so hard for trans people to just accept, you know, something else, just accept a different ontology that actually fits in with the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not,
Exactly.
and it's a different ontology that fits in the world. It's not a different expression. It's not, you know, stay with your body or anything. It's just a different ontology that makes everything actually better for everyone, not just you. And it actually even hurts you eventually, and you'll fucking learn that one day. You will I'm telling trans people, they are gonna, you know, come to a point where it's their, you know, womanhood is just done. Even their manhood is just like, it doesn't, you know, make any sense to them anymore.
Whoa, man! Did you hear about those people who are like got who are now in nursing homes with dementia, who had transitioned, and they're like, "Where's my dick?" That's so
What?
crazy. I do want to make an addendum to something that I said earlier. I did say that, you know, I was talking about like low education people needing to hear the word woman and instead of like menstruators, but I do want there to be
Wait.
sex ed that is specific to trans people, especially because so many are teenagers, are young teenagers, and I have heard sex educators like Lacey Green complain that all this terminology makes it extremely difficult to talk about sexual education and pregnancy prevention. So there does need to be
Well, there needs to
is
be
a
a
little
homosexual, you
sure.
know,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, totally.
as
On how to
well.
protect yourself. But I know,
And you know how
like
they divide up boys and girls? They should divide up queers too.
Oh yeah, or they should make an optional one, or I don't know. I think they should just teach everybody about queer stuff. Go ahead, like it's not gonna
It's fine. I
harm
mean,
you to learn
it's
about.
not, the thing, queer stuff is not exclusive to quote unquote queer people.
Yeah.
You know, quote unquote cisgender men can be feminine. They can wear dresses. They can have sex with other men if they're
Sure.
heterosexuals. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So
It's a free for all. It really is.
yeah.
What a wonderful world. It should be.
Sometimes TERFs get upset about Like, or they'll make this big deal about how, like, see, look, in this health website,
Oh my
they
God.
say that vaginas are called front holes, and it's like, no, that's like a thing just for trans people. Like, you just look like idiots when you get upset about that. Get upset about stuff that is actually addressed to you. Like menstruators. Don't get upset about stuff that trans people have
Well,
made for trans people. That's how we want it to be. As long as it's going to exist, they still need information, and if they need to have it in their language, then that's how they should be met, because it's more important that their health concerns are addressed than like
then
yeah.
their ideological and understanding of their ontology.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
fair
yeah.
enough. That's
All
fair
right.
enough.
Do you want me to find that article or whatever, wherever
Yeah,
I
go
found
ahead and
that
find
thing?
that.
Okay. Get that vape.
The lead other story is the typically, all right, so people don't want to admit it, but trans women getting murdered does get reported a lot. Certainly gets more attention than women being murdered.
Definitely. Actually, if you Google...
Yeah, women being murdered doesn't always get on the local news. Depends how big your community is.
If you Google, like, women murdered in the U.S., you just get trans women murdered lists.
Wow. Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. You can check it out.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so Malaysia Booker, who was the trans woman in that viral video who was getting beat up by a bunch of, like a mob, basically, in Dallas, has been shot dead. And
the reason why she's more in the news is because she got 2 separate incidents of violence against her. I don't know if they were separate. They could have been by someone else.
Yeah.
But
and then again, it's just like it's incredibly sad, but the way that these murders are being held up as like the fault of right-wingers, as the fault of TERFs, as the fault of non-inclusive language, as the fault of, somehow not giving trans people the surgeries that they want or the laws that they want is ridiculous. You know what this is the fault of? This is the fault of homophobia. I have to say it's in Black culture.
You're right.
The women who are getting murdered are Black, and they're not being murdered by rich, liberal white men.
Well, okay. I think another part of it, we'll get back to that briefly because we don't want to talk too much about that. But I think a big part of it is simply that trans is not normalized. It's being attempted to be more normalized in ways that every normal person hates, as well as they should, and they've come to hate us because of it. Well, did I just say us for trans people? Whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's the main thing, and they think that by calling themselves women, then it's going to normalize. No, everybody's going to know.
If anything,
that you're different or whatever, and like
it draws more negative attention.
Why can't we just normalize male femininity?
That's right.
I swear to God.
That's right.
Just oh my fucking Lord, like, and it's gonna take us so much longer to do that now, thanks to this bullshit. Well, I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll actually help, but
I don't think so, because I think it's just bringing more scoffs and negative attention, and it's bringing out it's putting weirdos up on the screen who are like, for some reason, like the spokespeople for these big trans organizations.
Well, I don't have a problem with the weirdos.
I don't have a problem with weirdos either, but if you're talking about like normalization, you can't normalize what is abnormal. Like, the best you can do is you can say that you can normalize the idea that we all just live and let live. And a lot of trans people will pull that out, but it's like, Yeah, but you redefining womanhood is not living and let living. That's you getting
Yes,
into my
exactly.
shit. Living and let living is going like, he's dating a transgender woman. Oh, okay. I don't have much
That's
experience
nice.
with that. That's nice. I'm not going to prejudge. And, like, that's how you deal with biases, is that you have a culture where acting on those biases is looked down upon, but you can't actually stomp out the biases because we're humans. We're weird tribalist animals, and we're like always
We're
about to
evil.
revert back to that. Well, no, we're not good or evil.
Well, there are many evil things about us.
And there are many good things about us, and one of the good things about
Okay,
us is
Karen.
that we can, have a society where we, just go like, oh, he's gay. Okay, can he do the job? Yeah, he can do the job. Great. I don't care that he's gay.
Is it racist to say that it's funny that her name is spelled, because she picked this name because she's trans, Muhlayssia? So it's like
I'm not going to comment on the spelling of black names.
And a lot of these trans women are also addicted to drugs and in prostitution.
yeah, like
You know,
do other prostitutes ever get reported on? It's never even reported that the trans woman who was murdered is a prostitute, but it's like constantly the case.
yeah, exactly. And the only thing I want to say about that is that I think it's incredibly sad, and I don't think that, I think that's something that feminism would actually apply to and work on. And it's not something that I think trans feminism or whatever actually, by rah-rahing sex work and, using the sadness of black trans murder to give white trans women computer programmers extra, cookies.
Yep.
Or extra, I don't know, like this like privilege hierarchy. It's like you almost have then, if you like, what's the opposite of privilege?
Oppression.
But then it becomes a privilege.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like if you're the most oppressed,
because we live in
then you have the most.
liberal zeitgeist. I want to say,
Exactly.
so, this is just, my speculation. I don't even have much, theory on this, but to me it seems, and this is in no way any kind of condemnation. To me it seems that, black masculinity stems from, racism and being seen as, an animal, essentially, and, being seen as, this threat or whatever, and basically that's been reclaimed. And I think that, like, I totally understand that, but I also see it sort of the way I do transness, as kind of like a coping mechanism rather than an actual ontology that it would be beneficial for us to follow. So what I see a lot of the time is when anti-racist activism and feminism come into conflict, people will defer to the anti-racist activists because white women are seen as more privileged than black men, which is fair. But at the same time, there are just aesthetic ideas in black activism that are, like very, very, very masculine. And I think that, you can call it white feminism or whatever, but, can be, and it's not white feminism because, there are black feminists who understand this as well in just the abstract. I think that is a point where intersectionality can actually, work out. Intersectionality is not about deferring to the more oppressed. It's about working together to find the best solution.
I mean, I think that intersectionality is just a framing tool.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's not, I don't even think it should be an activist tool. Like, I don't think it should be like a coalition tool. I think that individual groups, to the best of their ability to define themselves as having common goals, should be working towards those goals, and then work with other activist groups when their goals align. That way there's not this constant infighting about like, do we support Israel or do we not support Israel? It's like, just focus on feminism, and then if your group decides to support or not support Israel, or it's mixed on that, then just like don't deal with that because it's not your fucking activism that your group is working on. You know what I mean? So like I feel like when you clump all these peoples together because they're all oppressed by the white man, you're gonna find out that they don't all have the same goals, and they don't all have the same needs, and sometimes their goals conflict, but then everybody's expected to be on the same page on everybody else's shit, and you just end up with like infighting and bullshit, and nothing gets done. So I don't think intersectionality is good activism. I think it's good just for when you're like thinking about groups of people, and you say, okay, well, a black woman's experience is not the sum of the black experience and the female experience. It's its own thing. So then it kind of makes sense for like black women to come together to, you know, do something. And then maybe sometimes they will meet up with like black activist groups, and sometimes they will meet up with more broader feminist groups. I think it makes sense in that way, but like this whole like everyday feminism intersectionality is just such like trash, and it's just always leads to infighting. It just always leads to like left book dumpster fires, but in real life, and just screws activists out of their energy.
Right.
All right, next item.
Story is remember that the weightlifter ma'am that broke the records that we told you about? Well, Shim is mad, honey. Shim is not having it because she was stripped of the record for women.
Good.
Yeah, like, are you what? Why?
You're not a woman.
What? You think that women's weightlifting records are such a trivial thing to you that they should be used for your validation? Not even trans people's validation, but like your specific validation.
Your personal.
You're an
validation.
entitled man,
Fuck
and you
off.
don't, value women at all, and it shows completely when stuff like that is just, you're whining about that. Shim's statement is, where do we draw the line?
With women.
Yeah.
With female people. You're not one, so you're on the other side of the line. Go compete against males. Or start... It seems to me, like trans people will be like, there's not enough trans people to start their own divisions. And I'm like, some of these leagues are tiny. There's like how are there like multiple roller derby leagues? Like, is it really that popular?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That's just...
it seems to me that there are enough trans people who want to get into women's sports, but that if there was a trans division, they would be a lot less interested.
Probably so. I would like trans division of like something where I can smack another tranny. Sign me up.
Well, I think that's what roller derby is at this point.
That's very sad. It's I don't know. It's not like funny to me at all that, just we've got roller derby is a very interesting sport. It's very underrated. And here we are. It's just just been flooded with trannies. I just think because it's also a physically violent sport, and just here are these trans women who are just okay with just hitting girls. I'm just like, you have to have like some kind of fucking pathology to like be in a sport to be in like a sport of physical contact of like being in some position to hurt other players and being a man in that, or being somebody who was raised as a man in that, and to be okay with physically attacking women. I think you have to be a straight up psychopath. I'm sorry.
Yep. All right, speaking of psychopaths, the next item, I'm just going to say it really quickly because I just don't care about it that much, but So Helen Weberly was the gender doctor in the UK who was prescribing hormones to kids as young as 12 against NHS guidelines, and she was sacked. But her gender website, which offered like free consultations and like I think also like managed to get people puberty blockers and things that aren't really used in the UK. But the website still continued because her husband, who is also a doctor, was continuing to prescribe hormones and such to people, but now he has been suspended too. So UK activism, I think, is actually really working. Like a lot of things have been getting better in the UK.
Yeah. I just want to say, I believe in full bodily autonomy. Like, I don't care if people are, doing whatever to their bodies, but I don't, like, come on, these are children. This is, puberty is, like, a big deal. Sometimes it sucks ass, but, like...
But also, why are we, I just want to say this about, like, children in general. And I know that the thing is, like, what they're saying is that if these kids don't get what they want, they're going to commit suicide, which is not true. But, like, we have this idea that children should be shielded from all discomfort. But, like, discomfort is what you grow from. Just, like, when you get over an obstacle, you get through something, you're a better person. And I think that works mentally just like it does physically. Like, when you're running around, you're getting these microscopic cuts in your bones, and then your body comes, and in your muscles, and then your body comes and repairs them, and they become stronger. I think that's also true mentally. And I feel like we're just coddling these trans kids to the point of, like, of course they're going to be neurotic. They're going to kill themselves anyway, most likely, if they're being treated like that. It's just so counter good mental health practice. It's like, I've been reading, speaking of the word coddling, I've been reading The Coddling of the American Mind, which is about, like, campus shit, and just about how, like, we've basically taken, like, cognitive behavioral therapy, and now we're, like, doing the exact opposite. So we're making people, like, mentally unhealthy by teaching them to be weak. Yeah. So teaching them to be weak, teaching them to trust their feelings all the time. Teaching them to blame other people. Exactly. It's just like a recipe for just the most neurotic, anxious, suicidal people. And I don't know why we're doing this to our kids. What are we doing? Anyway.
Yeah, dumb online shit time.
Let's get on. Dumb online shit, my favorite.
Oh boy.
All right.
So the first thing I've got here is there's somebody is claiming to have a thread of 2,500 women who support trans rights.
I saw them when they
Number one,
started.
who cares? I'm sure there are 2,500 women in the world who, are, I think 51% or over 50% anyway of white women in the U.S. voted for Trump. So you think I fucking care about that? I don't. But the funny part is somebody went and actually looked through these, and a lot of them are trans.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew it because I saw when they started soliciting for those pictures. They were like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and we're going to make this big, thing of, like, reply with a picture. And I knew that it was going to be tons of trans women. It always is. When they would have, like, the lesbians supporting trans women, like, marches and stuff, and, like, protests against the TERFs, it would always be a bunch of trans women. There'd be, like, maybe one female real lesbian there, maybe, and it would probably be a trans man.
Aaron, do you think I should go to a pride parade just to laugh this June?
Yes.
God, that'd be so funny. I just like, look at these ugly people.
Do you think I should go to Pride with my adult human female shirt?
Yes. Just make sure you bring mace.
Yeah, I live in Chicago, so, like, people get pretty rowdy here.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean anything if you got a sausage or if you got a deep dish. You can still be a woman.
No clam, no claim. All right.
Was that an okay
Next.
accent?
No, it was terrible. So next we have, oh, Jesus, our dear friends at Yes, We're All TERFs, tired but excellent reading friends, took a screenshot of a Twitter exchange where a user called Devil in the Details, who I've seen around because they don't block TERFs, said, "I'm a woman, I have testicles."
Okay. Are you intersex? Maybe?
And then somebody else, some fucking TERF, said, "No, hon, you may identify as a woman on psychological level, but you are not a woman on biological and anatomical level. That's the whole point of being trans. Your identity and body don't match. Identity alone doesn't make anyone a woman." And Devil in the Details responds, "Nope, I am a biological woman who just happens to have testicles. Being trans just means that the doctor assigned the wrong sex to me at birth."
Well,
Doctors don't assign sex.
the appropriation
people.
of sex continues.
Yeah.
So
Doctors don't assign sex except in cases of ambiguous genitalia and intersex conditions, which are so rare, way more rare than
And
the
they're-
like 2 to 3% that trans people are claiming are intersex. No, like where a doctor actually assigns a sex, where they run blood tests and they maybe take ultrasounds to see if there's internal testes or whatever. That is so rare, and those would be the only times where a doctor would assign a sex. People are not assigning sex to trans people
Right.
when they're born.
Yeah, so this is basically just, sex becomes meaningless here, and, words have to have meanings. I don't know how dumb you would have to be to not understand that sex is meaningless with this sort of ontology. Google to bring non-binary emoji
Great.
into play. Great. Okay. I thought you could be you could look however you wanted to be non-binary. It's not like the non-binary emoji looks like, like particularly I guess I guess one of them looks androgynous. Like it's very funny. There's why aren't emojis androgynous in the first place? Like, well, just use a regular emoji then. Am I gonna really connote a look of somebody with non-binariness? That's so funny to me. There's this constant push articles that are like, this is what non-binary people look like, and I'm like, well, they look like men. They look like slightly feminine men, or they look like women who aren't wearing a dress, or maybe they are wearing a dress. It's like, what the fuck is this? This is, how dumb are you that you think this is like a new ontology?
Right.
Here.
Well, and they know it's not, because when they write articles about non-binary people, it's always AMABs, even though like 80% of non-binary people are female. But like the articles are always like 90% or more like AMABs, because let's be honest, it's not really that big of a deal for women to dress androgynously. Like, that's not new. That's not interesting. God. It's not pushing against anything. Yeah, let's move on to the next one.
The last thing about this is that they have an old person non-binary emoji. Okay, I'm sure that you'll get a lot of use. You'll get probably as much emoji out of that as like the Naruto emoji, the little spiral cracker emoji.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, the old non-binary person emoji. Next.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're back in the dumb online shit.
Yeah, so our next item for dumb online shit is... so it's... Where did you find this thing?
What is it, Karen?
Well, it's a screenshot that you've taken.
Hi, guys. I'm a 24 trans man, and I am dating a 24 trans woman. I'm sure you all have seen the news that a fucking shitty-ass American state just passed an extremely aggressive anti-choice law banning women from having abortions. My girlfriend and I were discussing it, and even though we are both pro-choice and pretty much acknowledge that a fetus is just a clump of cells that hardly constitute life, my girlfriend felt the need to remind me that as a man, I have no say in the matter anyway. She appreciates and thanks me for expressing solidarity with women's rights, but insists that men should have absolutely zero opinion whatsoever on the right to terminate a pregnancy. This really worries me because what if I get pregnant? I have not started hormones yet. Oh, they haven't started hormones yet, so I don't have to do that voice. No, I will. And neither has she, and we are both sexually active. Even though I am on the pill at the moment, there is always that small chance, you know. And so then, what happens if I do get pregnant? Is she going to claim that as the mother, she gets to then decide my choices for my body? I'm sorry, but I think that is bullshit. Now I am sure that we would both agree to terminate the pregnancy anyways because we hate kids, but we love doggos and definitely don't want them.
That's the worst part.
But I know. No, I don't know. This is bad. But it will be a while before we can both get bottom surgery, so until then I am on the pill and pregnancy could still be a possibility. Would it be best to just drop it and let her have the last word out of respect for the fact that she is a woman and accept that I, as a man, should get no societal say whatsoever in women's bodily autonomy rights? Grr, please, any advice, especially from other trans lovies, would be most appreciated.
The lovies! This is great peak material. This could peak anyone.
You can't do... This could peak someone. I'm surprised that at this point, and I have, like, so much experience reading trans shit that I cannot right away tell if something is parody or not. Like,
I don't think anything's parody anymore. I've seen so much shit. Like, I don't think anything's parody of trans anymore.
Pose law in full effect.
Mm-hmm. It's coming to reality. So, yeah. It's not even just statements anymore.
So, oh my God, where to begin with this? Okay. First off,
like Steven Crowder, he looks just like, trans women, quote unquote, do now.
Yeah. So first off, oh my God, where to begin? Well, first, I guess it doesn't matter, but like the fetus is just a clump of cells. I mean, this person's in high school, I'm sure. They can't be that old. And oh no, they said they were 24. Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh no, they did say their
That's
age.
Almost
Man.
my age.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, like neither of them have started hormones. I have seen this pattern in with trans women dating trans men, where the trans men are like straight women, but who are like, they never really like seem to go all the way, and I wonder if that's by the encouragement of the trans women. I just feel like the trans man boyfriends are there to validate the trans women. And this is clearly what's happening in this relationship. Yeah. I've seen like trans women talk about like their boyfriends, and then I see a picture of their boyfriends and it's like often younger girl. Like woman maybe, but like a young woman, and they don't look very masculine either. But it's all about the validation, and yeah, well, I mean, thank God they hate kids, because we don't want these people reproducing.
To me, I don't have much of like a stereotypical idea of trans men and trans women relationships. I think they just kind of, are in contact with each other because they're in the same community, or, still what's left of that community. But anyway, the main thing about this is just the manifestation of, the liberal zeitgeist being co-opted by men to, still control women's bodies. And that's what pretty much the fucking entirety of the fucking trans discourse surrounding abortion is. Because, the main thing we were talking about earlier with inclusive language being demanded with abortion, we didn't really touch on too much how it's trans women who don't want abortion being talked about as womanly because it doesn't fucking apply to them. And it has to apply to them. Oh, it has to. It has to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I don't even think there's that much to talk about this thing because it's just so ridiculous on its face. And, like, what more can you say about it? It's just fucking stupid. And it's not even the most stupid thing I've read. I don't even know if it makes the top 10.
Yeah, it's
Most
actually
stupid trans shit.
I believe it's yeah, it's I don't know, it's one of the craziest things I've seen. But the doggos part really, yeah, that puts it over the edge.
Love doggos.
Fuck you.
Whatever. All right.
And the last dumb online shit for today.
Oh man.
This one is
gonna
actually
get some
from
hate.
yeah, this one is actually from a TERF. You know, okay. So we are the hip young gender critical podcast. We see TERF say some dumb shit. We really do. Like,
I mean,
I don't think either
yeah.
of us are close to being peak TERFed or whatever, because I think being
No.
peak TERFed is mostly revolves around just the behavior of TERFs, like how, just like, how much they can be maybe busybodies, how just virulently unhip they can be, like, to the point of like, Jesus Christ, you're so out of touch with reality that your ideas shouldn't apply either. But
And
that's
a lot
not
of
really
things,
the case. But and then just like go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say a lot of the things that TERFs get accused of, such as like ContraPoints and his fuck you ContraPoints.
Pro
bitch.
TRA points.
Yeah. So I'll call her, I guess, for now.
No.
Fine. His.
No.
All right. Natalie. He says something along He says something along the lines of like that TERFs come and ascend on like these trans people with like 200 followers, like as though that's like specific to TERFs, and it's really just how Twitter works. I mean, just Twitter is kind of shit. Twitter leaves people open to that kind of stuff, and that's not unique to TERFs at all. But it does happen. I do see, like, and sometimes I'll want to comment on something, but I'll be like, man, this person is like a nobody, and there's like 200 comments here, and it's like, it's not building goodwill across the internet for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So we're not mean femmes either.
I can be, but
yeah, me too. I can definitely indulge in that, but that's definitely that's Truscum shit, to be honest.
I'm really trying not to.
But anyway,
yes, trying to restrain ourselves. This actually really doesn't have. I mean, it's. I guess it's off of the trans debate, but it's like now becoming like a rad femme, like eating your own kind of shit. Which says, it was a tweet that says, why don't political gay men exist? Oh, wait, it's like your entire ideology is misogynistic, homophobic bullshit that once again concentrates on female and only female sexuality.
And the reply.
And then they have a second tweet that says, hey, look, homosexuality is totally valid and there's no room to debate why a man would opt into it for political reasons because, LOL, why would he? But women obviously would choose lesbianism because reasons, derp-a-derp, clown emoji. And there's lots of people like, political lesbians make me rage.
Fuck yeah, whatever, fuck off. Okay, so...
Well, I'm not going to say fuck off.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Because
but,
I do understand...
I understand it, too.
I do understand where they're coming from. There's sort of like an identity... I don't want to call it an identity crisis because that's a thing, but there's a lot of scrambling for identities to actually mean something.
Yep.
Because of trans people. Trans people, you did this! So yeah, but I think we've talked to each other about this. We stand for political lesbianism. We stand even though neither of us are lesbians.
Right. Like, so this person has it right that there's a double standard. But I've talked about this before, even on the show, how uh, you have, uh, you know, white teens and black teens when they're involved in shootings, whether they're the shooter or the victim, are discussed differently. Black teens or even black men in general, black people are portrayed as, much more, criminal oriented, whereas the white people are portrayed as more human and innocent. And people like to go after places that report on white people as human, white shooters as human, as if we should be dehumanizing them as well.
Right.
No, we should just humanize the black, people involved in this. Like, what does dehumanizing people do here? It does it punish them harder? Like, that's stupid anyway. And so
equality by lowest denominator.
Yeah. And so why that's similar to me here is that it's correct that male homosexuality and female sexuality are not discussed similarly because political lesbianism is a thing. But why don't we just say political gay men should exist? Huh?
But I mean, it's true that
actually, and you know what? I talked about this real quick. Political gay men do exist. They are just a new phenomenon. And you know who they are? They're not transbians. They are alt-right people, alt-right dudes who fuck traps because traps they don't have any of the bad, things about women. Yeah, they don't have the baggage. They don't have like, I want to go shopping. Blah, blah, blah. No, like they like traps because traps play video games and say the N-word sometimes. It's like, okay, like, so yeah, that's your political gay men right there.
Right,
so,
they're straight men who are gonna go.
They do exist. They do exist.
Yeah.
They're just not in a woke context because nobody would choose men because wokely, because men, as we all know, suck. So political gay men are alt-right. So that's why you don't understand political gay men. Yeah, it's definitely real. They're gonna be like, our trap's gay at that point, but like that's definitely real.
I don't understand why people who are discussing biology and discussing rights and other things get so hung up. I mean, I guess I do understand it. It's because they're worried about losing ground on certain arguments against the trans shit, but like, who cares if a sexuality is chosen or innate?
Right.
What difference does that make? It doesn't do, and it's not. By having a certain sexuality, you're not taking up any resources, you're not, expecting particular space. I suppose they're claiming that lesbian spaces are, full of these political lesbians. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what these lesbian spaces are. If it's like, but also, like, I don't get it. It's, I mean, maybe there's like a different flavor of like interaction between a woman who has decided to only be with women because she's taking a political stand and is bisexual actually, and like actual innately born like no interest in dick gold star lesbians.
Maybe she's even heterosexual.
I don't think that people calling themselves political lesbians shouldn't be a problem to you unless they say, I'm a political lesbian and you're a lesbian and you have to date me. You should be able to say, like, I don't date political lesbians because it's not the same, like, experience for me. You should be able to say you don't want to date any group. So I've seen a lot of this on my feed and I just don't know, like, where is this all coming from? Did somebody say something about political lesbianism recently? Women have a different sexuality than men also. That's why political gay men wouldn't exist in the numbers that, like, it couldn't possibly exist in the numbers that political lesbianism can, because more women are bisexual than men are. But I don't Why is this always, like, all of a sudden coming up?
The reason why, Karen, is because you're right. People are they want their identity to be real, and other people's identity that is fake, but they want that one to be fake and theirs to be real, even though their identity is also not particularly real. Like, sexuality is pretty constructed. We have to understand this. Like, just because, compet has existed for however long does not mean everybody is going to be affected by it. That's just like, I can't tell you necessarily the social reasons why some homosexuals become homosexuals, but it's definitely gonna happen. So I don't like, and it's and I just okay. So I don't know how inborn sexuality really is. Okay, maybe there's a little bit there. I don't really know about that. But anyway, I just don't care about nature things. We need to be discussing things in society. Like, throwing anything up to nature is giving up, as far as I'm concerned. That's a part of why I think political lesbianism is so powerful, because you can fucking choose this space away from men. It's such a powerful weapon.
I guess
we don't need men for pleasure. That, like, it's very cliche at this point, but like, it is very powerful, because that's like the one thing that men might provide to women. Either that or like defense against men, which, like, why don't we just get rid of those ones too then?
I don't understand, like, why do we need sexuality to be a born this way kind of trait? Like, whether even if you are faking being gay or something, the laws that need to protect a gay person from discrimination would still apply to you, because if somebody was going to discriminate against you because they saw you kissing somebody of the same sex, it doesn't really matter if it's a biological trait or not. Like, I just don't understand. I mean, maybe political lesbians are really annoying. I don't know. I just don't get it. And it's like, why are you attacking... I mean, maybe trans women are calling themselves political lesbians.
No, I don't think that's it. Okay. To me, I really do think it's like, oh, their identity isn't real. They are invalidating my identity. And it's like, I'm getting a phone call.
Okay.
Hello? I guess that's me. It was some, like, police fundraiser.
Oh yeah, fuck that shit.
I didn't want to I didn't want to say, like, fuck you.
No, right, I know.
Sounded like a real guy.
I don't want to be on a list.
All right, theory sphere.
Okay, well, I mean, we're kind of already on it. Let's talk about your thing. Why are trans people so damn offended by misgendering?
That's a good question. Karen, what's your theory?
Okay, you put me on the spot. I think that they're really offended by misgendering for multiple reasons. One is that society, the liberal zeitgeist is setting them up to believe that they are owed pro-gendering, and that if your expectations aren't met, sometimes you could be upset. But the main thing is that they are constantly concerned about about not being the thing that they want to be, and you reminding them that they aren't the thing that they want to be is upsetting.
Well, you're right there, but why can't it just be, why does misgendering have to equal correct sexing? It's because not only have trans people totally gotten sex and gender mixed up, despite the fact that their ideology is so dependent on gender being a social construct. It's not necessarily their ideology is, but their identity is, because as soon as I found out that gender was a social construct, the day I found out, like probably the hour I found out, maybe even the moment I found out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not a man then.
Right.
Right. But then because there's such a de-emphasis on sex, I do think it is mostly just this mix up of sex and gender because or actually it's more maybe about even the abstraction from sex of gender because they're like, you look at my gold lame purse. I'm clearly a woman. That'll always be the funniest one. That'll always be the funniest example.
Or like
Charles Clymer.
or Danielle Moscato,
Oh my
who
god,
looks
with the
like
shoes.
such a fucking
Yeah, oh
man,
yeah.
going like, "Would a
How could
man
you?
wear these shoes, Saks Fifth
Yeah,
Avenue?" or
I'm
whatever.
definitely gendering you off of your damn shoes,
Oh
you
my
fucking
God.
bald beardo. Like,
Yeah,
oh my
I
god.
know. You look like George Costanza, and you're like, "Would a man wear these shoes?" Fuck
Oh my
you.
god. No, for real. I can just imagine George Costanza saying that too.
Well, yeah, because George
He
Costanza would
called
be
me- he called me
exactly
man. He called me-
he would be exactly the type of person
Jerry, he
to
called me
get
man.
into some kind of like situation where they're using transness to get some kind of advantage, just like women are saying.
It's manifested in reality.
Yes.
It has. There's a real George Costanza.
That's a meme now. Oh, we
Yeah.
gotta get some
We have to
memers
just
on
call
that.
Daniel Moscato George Costanza now.
All right, so yeah, so you know what? You know what is a better question that I think you could answer? What can trans people do to be less so damn offended by misgendering?
Understand that man is just a word, and that it can connote a sex. It can just mean biologically male. Same thing with woman. Actually, it's very important for many reasons that woman connotes biologically female. That's important for biological female rights, women's rights, as they have been called for centuries. And like, trans women should not necessarily be deciding that. It's okay to be as feminine a man as you want, or as masculine of a woman as you want. When I was first deciding to transition, I was like, gee, could I be okay with being a feminine man? And then I ended up deciding no, because my conception of feminine man had nothing to do with dresses or makeup. It was still very limiting. And guess what? You don't have to be a woman to wear a dress or makeup. That's not what makes you a woman. You're born a woman. It's like, I understand
Right.
that there's these like awful connotations about men who wear dresses, but aren't you already upset about those connotations anyway when you talk about trans women? There's all these stuff about trans women's rights that are like, or their right to not be offended, which is not real, but anyway, about just like how you shouldn't make men in dresses jokes because it's offensive to trans women. Well, if trans women were women, why would it be offensive?
Mm-hmm.
Well, trans women are males. Go.
Well, I also want to say that, you know, I don't put all, like, I know, like, people have personal responsibility and they make choices and things. I do think that it's not so much patriarchy from the right, or like this classic traditional patriarchy that is that's maybe has pushed some gay men into transitioning, you know, with internalized homophobia. But I think a lot of the, transbians that we see, a lot of these young SJW types, I think they are really pushed into not identifying as trans, not identifying as men, rather, whether they decide to be non-binary or genderqueer or whatever, or trans women.
I've seen it. It's awful. I have at least friends now who are succumbing to that, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Well, because
what is fucking wrong with you? How could you?
Well, think of the hierarchy of SJWism.
These people are supposed to be smart, though. They're smart enough to be my friends.
Yeah, I know.
And
but
even if they're woke, like, how just... It's unbelievable.
Well, I think that people,
it's really upsetting.
They need a certain amount of esteem within their groups, their people, their tribe. And I think that if you are a white male, you are pretty much at the bottom of the heap. You're expected not to talk. There's a lot of aggression towards, your identity. And I can see why a lot of men would say, well, like, I'm not like those men, so I must not be a man.
Right.
And you're swimming in this ideological soup.
You're right. It's just the complete gendering of everything. Woman has, who made woman a gender? It wasn't trans women. It was patriarchy. Sure. Because it's always like, like a real woman, is sexy or will make me a good hearty meal at night, like shit like that. Yeah. That's just like expectations have come to define a sex. And that's just exactly what trans ideology is. And that is definitely, I think, a core of the offense at misgendering.
Yeah, and I think it is really offensive because we've come really far from that, housewife kind of expectation of women. And now we have where, I can say for myself as a woman who's been in a lot of situations, like engineering school where there's not a lot of women, I did not want to be reminded that I was a woman all the time. Mm-hmm. And this gender bullshit makes gender more salient all the time, right? Like, it can't just be... You kind of want a bit of blindness. You want everyone just to kind of treat you the same as they treat everybody else. And right, I feel like when people talk to you about, I don't know, when people bring up your gender or your sex or whatever, just like them probably bringing up your trans status, it takes you out of what you're doing and puts you into a totally different set of self expectations and your own social bullshit that you carry around all the time instead of just kind of forgetting yourself. And so I think that a lot of this gender shit, this SJW shit is having the reverse effect that it actually means to have, because it's actually making people it's making people more racist and more sexist.
Yeah.
And making people perceive more things as more racist and more sexist. Yeah. So it's making the world more racist and more sexist. And was that really the plan? And also, I just want to say something, because this is, I gave this to you, but I'm going to take it back. This is Karen's theory sphere. This isn't theory, but this is also where I put my rants. Liberal feminists, if you're listening. When you were a young girl and you were like, I want to help the world, I want to make the world a better place, did you really think that was going to be nitpicking over tiny language, infractions, and feeling constantly threatened and anxious? What are you doing? What are you accomplishing?
Right.
Physical, material things. Those are the things that help in the world. And you knew that when you were a kid. You knew that had to do with, charity work and outreach and all kinds of things. But you're being lazy, or something, or you're internalizing all of this shit and feeling like you are broken and that you can't do anything except affect the language around you. And you can do way fucking more than that. So stop that bullshit, ladies. Get your shit together.
I want to also say very briefly, which is not super relevant, but you mentioned racism with regards to this. And I'm going to talk just very briefly about how racial identity is coming to define race more than literal biological race. How, certain art is black art or white art, certain, clothes or, attitudes are the attitudes of, some racial group, how Islam or Islamophobia is racist, stuff like that. And to me, all that does is, in gender and in race, really further marginalize the non-conforming. Because conformity then is the definition of something. Not only is that circular, but it's like conformity, and it has nothing to do with diversity.
No, we need more diversity of viewpoint.
It's fucking evil. Like, I can't be a man or a trans woman now. It's like, I can just be what I say I am, but
do you want to be trans
not
black?
Exactly, because sure.
Since you're rapping.
Yeah. I mean, 6ix9ine, who our last one was trans black. Yeah, I don't think we've gotten to the core of why trans people are so damn offended by misgender. I think it definitely revolves around something like this, but I think that a big thing is that you come to envision yourself as your internal gender identity pretty much immediately. So even if you don't pass at all,
like, but I'm a woman.
If somebody calls you a man, even if you understand why they do it, it still makes you sad. And see, that actually sort of makes sense to me, because part of the reason why I'm only re-identifying, I'm not detransitioning, so you can call it a partial detransition. It's a social detransition, because I actually think social detransition is more harmful than medical detransition or medical transition in the first place. But part of this is because I have patriarchal trauma. Okay? I have a lot of baggage associated with what it means to be male and my failures growing up. I was bullied a lot for what I perceived, at least, and then to not be masculine, and because I had a lot of social anxiety. I was a bit of a spaz, which is not feminine, but if the more you get bullied, it's a vicious circle. The more anxiety, and the more timid you're going to be, and so that more and more piled on, and I came to disassociate from male ability to take what they wanted, the male confidence and confidence, in maleness.
Like your expectations
because
of what
of that.
You felt that men felt.
Right. Not that and I think this came along with this, but I ended up having this sort of idea that women are, no matter what, going to be bothered by a man telling her that he likes her, because to me that was imposition and almost demanding of emotional labor if it was not reciprocated. And so, yeah, just male taking up space was
Mm-hmm.
what I sort of associated maleness with. And, you know, just like, just stuff like that just kept, not that I didn't take up space, not that, you know, like, I wasn't, you know, not that I didn't have patriarchal ideas about stuff, not that I didn't have misogyny, but there are, you know, certain things about manhood that did not register as they should, quote unquote. And then I eventually found, after,
Jesus.
you know, after a nice teenness of adolescence of cross-dressing, I found transgender ideology, and that
You could be
seemed
born
like the answer to
again.
my problems. And
Yeah.
so misgendering, I believe, is offensive, not necessarily only for the work that you put in to your new gender or whatever, but also because it reminds you of your manhood, or your failed manhood, or your failed womanhood,
Your
and that's
sordid
something that you're trying
past.
to escape. See, this is not the proper avenue. People should not be trying to escape their past by creating this form of social suicide, not, you know, social suicide as in like getting rid of all your friends, or, you know, doing something super embarrassing on purpose, but social suicide as in destroying the person who you once were, and, you know, crafting a new one, that's just a different gender. That is not healthy. It really fucks up your psyche, because you're going to be constant. It's just it's an identity of failure, and that's just what it's defined by. Like, we can, you know, have all like these nice, you know, like, oh, you know, like, wow, these trans people are so beautiful, or they're so brave, or whatever. But like,
Stunning.
unless like you're just a total sap, you're gonna get sick of that real fast.
Yeah, sure.
And like, we shouldn't be defining things off, you know, just saps, just liberal saps who just like, I'm like, I'm so happy to be trans or some shit. Like, people who say they're happy to be trans there's only one type of person I've ever heard say they're happy to be trans. Or actually two, maybe very, very, very new transitioners, very new transitioners. The other kind of person, old sissies.
Oh, yeah.
That is it.
Yeah, they'll
So
love it.
I don't understand. Like, so misgendering to them is bringing back their old life that they jettisoned. But that's not, it doesn't have to be that. Number one, misgendering is not the way it should be. It's correct sexing. We need to deal with our patriarchal trauma differently. Patriarchal trauma for men we need to deal with differently, and patriarchal trauma for women we need to deal with differently. And gender abolition and radical feminism is definitely a much more healthy avenue than that social form of suicide. We can realize that, you know, manhood doesn't have to be what we were told it was, because it's just a literal fact that
Right.
you'll never escape.
Sure.
And even if you'll never really escape your socialization, that's something that you can, you know, do a lot better with. And you can do a lot better with it than just denying everything.
Just totally into my point was just that we've spoken about it before, that radical feminism does seem to take the edge off of being misgendered when trans people, you know, read it and take it into account.
All right. So that's our pitch for radical feminism. And that's the episode for the week. And yeah.
Sumimasen.
Because there's no new song this week. Next week. Sorry.
扉を開けて未知なるパラダイス体験しようおいでおいでよ